And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Alright folks, today we're going to be taking a look at StelCon Infinity Attack, React, Prevail. It's actually kind of an odd name, StelCon Infinity. It's from Conquest Gaming LLC. It has some really neat spaceships in it. And it's about space, which is one of my soft spots. You can make 100 games about space. However, since there is so many games about space and space combat, then this one needs to be something special for us really to get into it. Is it special? Let's look. The board for this game, each player has their own player board, and it's really interesting how they fit together because you can kind of like roll them and to fit in more. And so the more boards you have, the more they roll together. You could even play with just 3, or if you're playing with 2 players, you can flip them over. But let's just take a look here kind of at the 4-player board. And if you look, each player has their home planet here, and this kind of shows there's their amount of defensive guns. It shows basically how this planet connects through these warp gates, whatever, to another planet. And so I can go from here to here, from here to here, from here to here. I can also fly through this kind of red warp, here go, into this warp hole, which then comes out over in this warp hole and keeps traveling in the red direction. So this connects to this. And this connects to this one here. So there's all kinds of connections, and you're really connected to the person next to you. When you go to a new planet, so let's say I fly here, you turn over the top card to see what that kind of planet it is. It basically shows the automatic defense of that planet, maybe some special things about that planet, and how much that planet might produce. And so different planets have different things. And if you have 2 of the same planets that are each planet, there's 2 of them, they're essentially adjacent to each other, so you're never sure where you'll be adjacent to other people. It really gives us kind of a very 3-dimensional feel to it. But hey, come on, we're here to look at these really cool spaceships. Okay, these spaceships are formed out of cardboard, and they're put together like this, and here's the 5 spaceships for the red player, and they look different than the other ones. For example, you can see here's a green spaceship. Let me show you this is the biggest spaceship here for the red, and you can see how the green one looks different than that. And then here's the orange one, and then the yellow one. So they have very different looks to them, and that's not the biggest yellow one. There it is. And so that's pretty cool. And they also have slots in them, and as the game progresses, you will be able to put fighter airplanes on them, or to add shields or more missiles to them. I can add another engine to this by just sliding it in that slot. And this game has a very strong economy, where you'll have your ships here on the board. They start in a shipyard, and you can send them to they start in a dry dock, and then you can launch them if you pay for them. And then when they're destroyed, they go to the salvage yard, and they can come up here to shipyard, and you can pay to move them back and forth here so that you can launch them again. But you have a production, you'll have 2 markers on the board, one to show how much you're producing and one to show your consumption. The more ships you have out there, the more your consumption is. And the more things that you buy for them. So you can buy all sorts of things and have your ships fly around the board. You only have 5 ships, but you can really buff them up if you want, but it's expensive to fly those ships around. Now the game progresses with this. There's a whole pile of cards here, and these cards, many of them are action cards, but a lot of them are also cards that you can play in your ship. For example, this is Solar Sails, and installing a ship with a base FP of 4 or less for +1 move. So each of your ships on your board has a spot to put these cards in. And a lot of these cards have crews, and they do different things. Let's see, there's There's all sorts of things. Some of these cards can be played out on board. A scanning crew. That makes you better at scanning other planets. Or a savage crew. You can even play cards on other people. There's an ion cannon, and there's all sorts of things that you can put. Some of the cards that you put not go on a ship, but they go on one of your planet systems that you have out there and give you benefits from that. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to go out and increase your planets so that you can have more points. These crystals, as they come in, you might capture a planet, and then when you go out to actually bring in the things, the salvage that planet, it might produce less for you. It might produce more. You can try to add more production to some of the planets. There's a spot here on the board where you can add more defensive guns. And so you're going to go back and forth each turn of the game. You're going to check your dock. You're going to see your fuel. You're going to compare your resources, and then you'll move your ships around the board, and then you'll fight other ships possibly. Fighting is a very simple concept where you compare guns and roll a die and add it to that and try to blow up the other spaceships, and you just keep going back and forth. You can play a game in which you have victory points. There's a variant for victory points, but the game itself is about conquering your opponent's homeworld, which isn't the easiest thing in the world because each homeworld is a little different because of the special abilities that alien races have. But you can see there's a lot of guns there, and if they have any ship there, they can defend it. But the game is not really that long because you can build your ships as quickly as you can, load them up, and head them towards your opponent's planets. The more planets you get, the more resources, allowing you to have bigger ships, allowing you to go for your opponent's home planet. It's not a very complex game. You might think with all these, pieces here. There's so many different pieces. One of the cool things that the game has is you can build more warp gates. Like if you notice, everybody has a possibility for a planet here in the middle, but there's no way to get to it. Well, you can build, a certain card will let you build a warp gate to that one. Or you might be able to build a warp gate to some planet that you normally wouldn't be able to. There's all sorts of neat cards and neat concepts of the game, but it really plays like a light game. Well, there's a lot involved in this game, so let's talk about some of the highs and lows. First, the low. The rule book is not written very well. It's written, and I had to jump all over the place to find the rules, and there's lots of story involved, which I'm glad there's story, and there's even let's give you an example of play, and it kind of tries to drive you through the game, and it would have been better if they had given it to a rules editor who said, this is what you need to say to play the game. And that's something that we have a lot of problem with, obviously, with a lot of these smaller companies and publishers, and especially through Kickstarter. So hopefully that's something that can be fixed in the future. But putting the rules aside, it is a very fun game. There's a lot of fiddliness to keeping track sometimes of the economy, but customizing spaceships is something fun. And the fact that even in a 6-player game I can hit almost anyone on the board at any point is really cool. You don't have to worry about elimination because once someone's homeworld is captured, boom, they're out. And even if someone gets beat down and they're down to the dumps, they can still build a mega ship, and say, bring it. So the game can take longer, it can take fairly quickly. It all depends on how aggressive players are. And the cards, while they swing wildly, one of the things I thought was nice about the cards is they have a certain small stack of cards which always goes on the top. So some of the really cool cards can't come out right away. So you have these starter cards that people are drawing and playing. The time on the box says 30 to 45 minutes per player. 30 minutes with a 6-player game for 3 hours. That's a little long, I think, from the enjoyment that you get out of this. But as a 4-player game, very tight, I thought. A good 2-hour game. And it does space combat fairly lightly. I mean, we're not sitting there and it's not a 4X game. There's exploring, and there's certainly exterminating, and there's certainly exploiting, but there's not a whole lot of expanding and finding different technologies and such. You're just going around. Your goal is to expand as fast as you can so you can hit your enemies and have the resources to do so. And there's the little spaceships that you can have. That's a little fiddly. I almost think they could have just dropped those out because they're not a whole lot different than guns, but you can use them to go and explore planets. There's a lot of neat things. The artwork is beautiful. The spaceships are cool. This is a good alternative to plastic spaceships, having the 3-dimensional style ships and adding the guns as a visual effect. That's cool. That's cooler than plastic ships, actually. So I like it a lot. I like to see, kind of maybe that it had a little bit more development, but for where it's at right now, It's a very impressive game. I was about to say very impressive little game, but I don't know if I could call it little. But it certainly is on the lighter side of things. I would say it's a light medium space game that looks epic and can even feel epic sometimes with the battles, but for the most part is tactical combat. You only have 5 spaceships that you're going back and forth with, and they get blown up and then you just bring them back. But a lot of neat things involved here. Certainly one to, if you like space games, I would certainly give this one a look at for sure.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.
Shut the door!
There? There.